So Julie Bonar serves as the president and CEO of Neighborhood House Association. She has been in that position for nearly 3 years. Prior to that, Julie taught business education at the Knoxville Center for Student Success. She started teaching within Peoria District 150 in November of 2018 after moving to Peoria from the Washington, D.C. area, where she worked as a student for a student association. Julie has over 25 years of experience in the field of education and nonprofit management of Science from Philadelphia University and a Master's of Education from Bowling Green State University. Julie is an advocate for literacy in children. She's a member of Peoria-North Rotary Club, where she serves as chairperson of the Literacy Committee. She also serves as a volunteer at CASA, as vice president for the Alpha Park Library and board chair for the Foster Village Peoria. She's an active member of St. Anne's Parish in North and South Peoria. Prior to marrying her husband, John, Julie was a foster parent to teen girls specializing in youth with emotional disabilities, addiction, and immigrant youth. Julie and John have also hosted students from Czech Republic and Germany through the Youth for Understanding and Exchange program. Originally from Oregon, Ohio, okay. Julie spent most of her career on the East Coast, living in Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Virginia. She enjoys cooking, travel, spending time with her dogs, Onyx, Winnie, and Lulu, and cheering on the Ohio State University football team. Go Bucks!
And the emphasis is on the Ohio State University football team. So thank you for having me today. I'm not here to talk about Neighborhood House. I'm here to talk about our epidemic of loneliness and isolation. And I'm going to just kind of give you a brief overview of the U.S. Surgeon General's advisory on the healing effects of social isolation or social connection and community. Back around the time I started at Neighborhood House and was in Rotary, we had our exchange student from Germany, and one of her biggest frustrations in America was getting people, like her classmates at school, to want to do things. So many of them just wanted to stay at home and sit in their room and just send Snapchats to each other and not really want to get together and socialize. And so there were many times up until she joined the track team that I felt as if, she really felt lonely. And there are many times that she, broke down in tears about why doesn't anyone want to do anything? And so in 2023, when the Surgeon General released the report, our epidemic of loneliness and isolation just really, it resonated with me because I saw how much it affected her when she was moved from the school in Chicago and came to live in Peoria with my husband and I. And many studies look at social isolation and loneliness as the same. And what I love about this report is that it recognizes that while the two concepts are similar, they are also distinctly different. And so I put those definitions up there so you can understand what it is we're talking about. So social isolation is objectively having few social relationships, social roles, group memberships, and infrequent social interaction. So us as Rotarians right there, we have different group membership here. And I know many of us are also members of many other organizations as well. But there are some people that really lack that. On the other hand, loneliness is more subjective. It's that internal state. It's the experience that results from perceived isolation or just unmet need between someone's preferred versus actual experience. So someone can be very connected but still feel lonely. I kind of liken that to the saying of being all alone in a crowd. And sometimes you may feel that way if you're in a new environment, you don't know anyone, you're around all these people, and like, I don't know anyone. It can be lonely. And so why is this being studied now? So the data is clear. Between 2013 and 2020, so this data ends at 2020, okay? we saw that social isolation, and I know those charts are kind of small, but social isolation increased by 24 hours a month. Household family social engagement was down by 5 hours a month. Companionship saw a decrease in 14 hours per month. Social engagement with friends decreased by 20 hours per month. Non-household social engagement was down by 6.5 hours per month, and social engagement with others was down by 10 hours per month. So I would pretty much be able to predict that if we went from 2020 to now, that would be even more increased. I know myself personally, once I get home, I want to put my pajamas on or my comfy clothes, and I don't want to go out or go anywhere. And I think many of us have gone through that experience. So who is at risk, at most risk? And I've done this presentation quite a few times at the UI College of Medicine, but it was more focused on seniors. But really, every single one of us in this room, everyone that we know, could be at risk. But in particular, those individuals that have poor physical or mental health are at risk. Individuals with disabilities, financial insecurity, those who live alone, single parents, younger and older populations. But interestingly enough, young adults are twice as likely to report feeling lonely compared to those who are over the age of 65. Ethnic and racial minority groups, LGBTQ+ individuals, rural residents, victims of domestic violence, and those who experience discrimination or marginalization. So let's think back to March of 2020. And I found this image, and I found it, I guess, a little comical because it says, due to government lockdown, we will be closed until March 27th, I think is what's on the slide. And I think we know that that lasted much longer. And I want you to just take a moment and think about what that experience might have been like for you and how it impacted your life at that time. So while social connection had been declining for decades prior to the pandemic, the onset of the pandemic with its lockdowns and stay-at-home orders was a critical time during which the issue of connection came to the forefront of public consciousness, raising awareness about this critical and ongoing public health concern. Many of us felt lonely or isolated in a way that we've never felt before. At the time, I wasn't at Neighborhood House. Brent was, so he was working. But in the position I was in, I was home every day, and my husband was going to work every day. And I was having to teach classes, and no one was showing up online. And so it's me with a black screen. And my husband would get home, and I was like that little puppy at the door being like, let me tell you. And like my most excitement of the day was watching Onyx move from the backyard. As the sun moved, he moved his like laying down location. That was like my news for the day, But I just was like, I just felt like, oh my gosh, when did I become so needy? But many of us postponed or canceled our meaningful life moments and celebrations like birthdays, graduations, and marriages. Our youth's education shifted to online, and they missed out on the many benefits of interacting with their friends. Many people lost their jobs and their homes. We were unable to visit our children's siblings, parents, or grandparents. Many people lost loved ones. We experienced feelings of anxiety, of stress, of fear, sadness, grief, anger, and pain through the loss of these moments, rituals, celebrations, and relationships. So let's talk about the health outcomes. Multiple studies have found that those with social connection are more likely to live longer. So that's good news for us because we're all connected as Rotarians, right? So we have connections. But probably the most stunning data that I feel came from this report is that Lacking social connection is as dangerous as smoking up to 15 cigarettes a day. And you can see on the chart that you have smoking up to 15 cigarettes a day, drinking 6 alcoholic drinks daily, physical inactivity, obesity, and air pollution. Lacking social connection is more harmful on one's health than any of those things. And this came straight from the report. Like I didn't make it up, I promise. You can see it came from the Office of the U.S. Surgeon General at the bottom. So what are the health impacts? Cardiovascular, we know that those who lack social connection are at a 29% increase for heart disease and 32% increase for the risk of stroke. Hypertension, diabetes, infectious disease. So this is interesting. Something I pulled out of the document is that those who are more socially connected have stronger immune responses independent of baseline antibody count, suggesting stronger immune responses even when exposed to new viruses. Cognitive function. Chronic loneliness and social isolation can increase the risk of developing dementia by approximately 50% in older adults. And then the ones that we would think go along with social isolation and loneliness: depression and anxiety, suicidality, and self-harm. So what can we do about it? So this is what the Surgeon General proposes, is that, you know, we can go about strengthening our social infrastructure in local communities. We can enact pro-connection public policies. We can mobilize the health sector, reform digital environments to develop more pro-connection technologies. We can deepen our knowledge, such as by increasing public awareness, and we can build a culture of connection. Now, some of those things sound like they need to be things from like maybe our local government, you know, or different organizations, things that they can do. But what is it that each one of us can do as individuals? So a few things we can do is understand the power of social connection and the consequences of social disconnection. We can invest time in nurturing our relationships. We can minimize distractions during conversations. We can seek out opportunities to serve and support others. And I think that's one of the things that our club does best, is we're constantly looking at how can we serve and support others. We can be responsive, supportive, and practice gratitude. We can actively engage with people of different backgrounds and experiences. We can participate in social and community groups. We can reduce practices that lead to feelings of disconnection from others, such as excessive social media use. When my husband first got out of the military, one of his coping mechanisms for some of the PTSD was just to aimlessly scroll through social media or watch dumb YouTube videos. Sorry if any of you love those dumb YouTube videos. And I would get so frustrated because he would be so tuned out that he wouldn't even hear me speak or ask him a question. And, you know, we've had to, you know, he's had to adapt, I've had to adapt. And, you know, we both are very open with each other to be like, hey, you know, you're spending too much time. We need to socially connect. I guess there could be worse things that he could do to deal with his PTSD, but he would be embarrassed if I said, if he was here and I was talking about that. But
he's online, isn't
he? He could seek help during times of struggle, which we know is so hard. I was at a conference back in September when they were talking about those people who are isolated and how they could benefit from like friendly, you know, visitor programs or pen pal programs or things like that. But the people who need it the most are the least likely to be the ones to reach out for it. I encourage you to be open with your healthcare providers. Make time for civic engagement and reflect on the core values of connection and how you approach others in conversation and through the actions that you take. Some key questions to ask yourself when considering your interactions with others include, how might kindness change this situation? What would it look like to treat others with respect? How can I be of service? How can I reflect my concern for and commitment to others? And in many ways, those questions very much remind me of our four-way test as I read them. So I'm going to leave you with a challenge. And at your table, there are some little pink cards. And about a year ago, the Surgeon General's office did this challenge. So that's why they have like all the social media things. But I encourage you to be very mindful of making connections. And over the next 5 days, think about how you connected and then how that made you feel. And track that. Be mindful of those interactions and connections that you make when you're out there in the world. And so with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Sure.
There you go.
I think that's going to work.
Thank you for this. And it's so interesting that you'll be talking about this today because I'm currently doing a sermon series on created for community. And I'm wondering, can I borrow some of your information there and this little card that you gave us?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, wonderful. I want to use it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I can send you the PowerPoint. I've also, like I said, I've done this at the College of Medicine, but it's been more focused on our senior neighbors and that. And so I also have a lot of videos and things like that specific to that population.
So my mom's 86 and she lives alone. And one of the only ways she connects is with social media. See the two-edged sword here? And yet I'm on my phone way too much than I should be too. How do we, what is it? It's always balance, or how do you address social media?
Yeah, I definitely think that it's about finding balance, because the report doesn't say to eliminate, it talks about developing pro-connection technologies. I know when all the lockdowns happened, my best friend back in Maryland, she's a small business owner. She does personal training. And at that time, she didn't have a facility, but she would go to people's houses. And obviously, people didn't want her going into their house because we didn't know what was going on. And so we implemented FaceTime Fridays. And every Friday at about 1, we would grab a glass of wine and we would spend sometimes like 2 or 3 hours FaceTiming, which we would have done in person if we both lived in the same place, like prior to the pandemic. But, just really trying to be mindful as to how those connections are. I know my mother, before she passed at 80, 5 years ago. And that was her connection towards the end. And she really deteriorated fast once she couldn't operate her phone or her iPad anymore. That was just when we saw the massive deterioration in her health. And I just thank God every day that she passed before the whole COVID lockdowns and all of that. So yeah, it's finding that balance.
I got you.
So we know the issues. Is there something that someone has started that is trying to resolve the issues, like connecting the dots? Because like I wouldn't have known about the Rotary Club unless it was, I met Leah.
Right.
So how do we connect those people that are just, that are not connected to these things?
Right. There's so many different things. And there's lots of organizations within our community that are working on that. So for example, Ashley, our president, works at Epic, and I'm probably going to get the name of the program wrong, but you have like where some of your clients like live in a home, like host family. So they have host homes for individuals with disabilities. so that they live with another family and they have that connection, as well as a variety of other programs. At Neighborhood House, where I work, our biggest program is Meals on Wheels. So we're delivering a hot meal every day to homebound seniors within the Peoria and Tazewell County areas. That's about 850 to 900 meals a day. But it goes beyond that. It's looking at our youth, in our youth program, giving the youth opportunities to connect with one another and not just sit on the computer and play games, which we make them play academic games, but they're games. But we also do other things where they're connecting and interacting with one another. Same with our adult literacy and GED program. They gather, they have, it's called Coffee and Conversation. And so it gives the learners a chance to get together, and we celebrate those when they get their GED and let them come together and see the successes. Our Rotary Club, we do in-person readings. So I know we have quite a few members that go to Elise Ford Allen and take an hour or 2 hours out of their month to read with the first graders at the school. And so that's building that connection. And then we also have the Pen Pal program, which I'm not going to call out any names, but we still have quite a few January envelopes back there. So if you signed up to be a Pen Pal with a student, a second grade student at Elise Ford Allen, there's envelopes back there. So it's really about just being conscious of those things and creating those opportunities.